Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Babbling Irons channel. Today, we're going to be doing our overall West Ham season review for the Premier League. We're going to be looking at the season before, kind of comparing it in terms of expected stats. We're going to go through from it the summer kind of transfer window and how we kind of want to see that happen this year in comparison, and where we kind of went wrong last season, and also the good moments we did have. So. Yes, Mike Sloth, welcome. We're going to start off with all the way back in summer when we look at that transfer window. If you could kind of summarize it, just in a few words, what would you guys say? Because it was quite minimal, quite expensive, but did it have the impact needed to kind of progress and push on where we wanted to last season?
Yeah, I think mixed bag, right? You can argue both positively and negatively, I think, for our window and our summer window, because, we got the signing of Dawson, who had a good season. So that kind of, that improved our centre-back options in terms of, adding depth. We brought in Kurt Zouma, which, just off the back of winning the Champions League, known quantity in the Premier League, quality centre-back. So, that kind of start is great. Then obviously Areola, again, had a brilliant season at Fulham, despite them getting relegated. Again, adding that quality, probably we'll discuss as we go on how we felt maybe he should have been involved, maybe more or less, or however you want to put it. And then you have the confusing signings, ultimately, in Krul, who, based on how he played in the Euros, you would have stepped away logically. And I think we paid nearly 4 to 5 million quid in a loan deal. And that's a substantial amount of money for a player that played, at most you could say, a handful of games. And then, then there was Vlasic, who was signed for a position that we didn't necessarily need because he's, an attacking midfielder. There was a lot of bluster around how he can play up front, but ultimately, he's not a centre forward, and that's the role we needed. But I guess he was kind of signed for his flexibility because he can play across that front line, and yeah, it's just one of those deals that, had it worked, it would have looked great. But the fact that he's played so little makes it look again as to, you have to question who was making those decisions and how the scouting, shall we say, we don't know how much he was scouted, arguably, how the scouting and the management decision all came to the point of, this is the player to help us in a real position of need, such as centre forward, and also give that creative spark. Especially when you think of how, in my opinion, how misused he was over the course of the season. It really does make you question the scouting and the management decisions of those two signings in particular, and that's two signings that cost us over 30 million quid cumulatively. So
Yeah.
Arguably you would say it's a big waste of money.
Well, with the signings we did make in the summer, Vlasic and Krul, I think were pretty near the end of that transfer window, maybe even on deadline day. So, Sloth, do you think that kind of Vlasic deal, spending nearly £30 million on him, was kind of a panic buy and something that we just had to do with Europa League? And if we didn't make that signing, especially alongside Krul as well, the fans would have been completely restless with what had happened that summer transfer window. Bringing in just Zouma, Areola, and Dawson on a permanent wouldn't have been enough.
I think I might sound a bit harsh here, but to be honest, I think although it was done as a necessity signing, it was just a really silly one. It was one that was you could also argue. And as much as I like the guy, he trains hard and he works hard. And I don't think that he suited how we wanted to play, or even the player that we were aiming to replace in Lingard at all. He's a hard-working, that sort of centre attacking mid, and who gets himself about and uses his body. And he comes from a long line of athletes as well. His dad's an Olympian, and he's got this heritage in the family that you're going to get an athlete, but we just, it was weird because it seems like Moyes had so little faith in the player that he got that there was almost no scouting involved. And when we hear that actually he's a Moyes signing, that kind of just baffles me, because I question, why are you signing him if you're not going to give him the time off the bench? We saw it with Bowen, even when he was signed. Like, he was getting on at the end of games and he was introduced in, but he still got that kind of organic way into the side. And for Vlasic, I just kind of felt a bit sorry for him. He didn't get that chance, and even when he did, I mean, I know he played against Sevilla and he missed a bit of a sitter, but he didn't have a bad game by any means. He was pretty good. But I think I said it a few times on my Twitter when he played, he looks rusty. And when you sign a player and you keep them rusty, Kral was a strange one because, again, apparently he was a Moyes decision. And I think he even wrote in an article, didn't he, about him? He said it for Scum, but he did target him as a player that he liked. And to not give him those minutes, if you rate him, is one of those things that I just feel, while it was maybe a move to satisfy the fans, the logical step you would think is to have a list of options, a list of backup players who Moyes rates and he knows he can put his faith in, as opposed to let's just go out and buy someone, which kind of feels like looking back on it.
Yeah, well, we did start the season really well. So, we went to Newcastle, got that 4-2 win. Then we played Leicester, beat them 4-1 and things were looking good. Got that draw with Palace at home. I think we led twice in that game as well. And, we didn't play poorly. We played pretty well. And only then did we make those signings of Crown Vlasic after those 3 games when we went into that international break. So we were looking good before that. And then we had Southampton away to start September when we drew 0-0. And that was the first time we saw Vlasic. And he actually came on around the 60th minute, 65th minute, and he looked pretty good. Everyone was kind of like, wow, this won't be long before this guy's starting. He made a real impact on the game. He's being direct, confident, everything we kind of wanted to see from that kind of signing. So do you think it's kind of down to Moyes' management of Vlasic as kind of the reason why we haven't seen more of that this season? And, like you said, Sloth, we've seen a rusty version of a good player that could potentially turn into a very good player for us if given, that run of consistent games.
I think the problem is that when we're talking about who he's replacing, the player he's replacing is very different. So Lingard has that pace and he has that agility and he's got that finishing ability that, comes with game time. And, Vlasic hasn't had that. Vlasic is a good finisher, and I've seen him play in the Russian league, but you can't just bring a player in and expect him to play with a lot of new players, link up with them properly, and finish on top of that. So while I think that the early signs were good, and I think pretty much everyone after that Southampton game was quite positive about him as a signing overall. I think his introduction, it wasn't the same. He wasn't given nearly the same minutes as someone like Bowen when he was introduced. Not that I'm saying he's the same level of player, but even Ben Rama, when he started to come into the side, he was very much taken off at points, or he was introduced on the kind of 70th minute mark. But it felt like a lack of rotation was really stopping him gel as a signing. And when we were looking at the player he's replacing, I think that was the issue. He's very different, and I've said it for quite a while. What we lack is pace, and Vlasic, unfortunately, doesn't have that much. So it was that issue of covering for someone who's got it when you don't, and that's particularly rough on the guy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, sorry, Mike. Just speaking of Lingard there, in our next couple games, we played United at home, where Lingard turned out to score against us, and then we actually I didn't realize this at the time, because when you look back, you think that game's kind of really pivotal for us. Our following game, we had Leeds away, where we got that really late winner with Antonio. So, Mike, I know people will kind of say there's those big moments in seasons where we're not getting that point against United, or we're not getting that last minute penalty equalizer. But actually, on the flip side, if you look at it, just a week later, we're stealing all 3 points at Ellen Road. So, do you think it's kind of unfair to pinpoint those kind of moments in a season as the defining factors as to why you didn't get sixth or why you didn't get certain aspects?
I think when you look back, it's because we were 2 points behind United, and we had two very obvious points in games where you can pinpoint and pull back on saying, had we done something different, had we scored that penalty against United, that's an additional point to us. That's 2 dropped points for United. Same with the reverse leg when we conceded a last minute penalty. That's 3 points to them, none to us. So had we got that point, we'd be sitting in United's space and they would be sitting in ours. So there's fine lines and fine margins which you're always going to pinpoint and look to. But there are other games, I think, over the course of the season, you can't ever just say it's just down to one game, because there are other moments in games and other results that impact. And I think, unfortunately for Vlasic has played quite well against Man United, and I'm pretty vividly remember him being quite close to scoring, coming into a near post cross next with his left foot, and it just going wide of the post. I think it would have put us 2-0 up in the game as well had he scored that. And then Lingard gets one chance and scores. I think that kind of punctuated the point for Moyes as to, I have a player who has chances or has a chance and doesn't get that finish. He doesn't kind of have that cutting edge, but regardless of how you want to kind of frame it. Whereas Lingard had one chance, put it in the top corner. And I think it kind of emphasised in his mind as to, well, that's why I wanted him. This guy's not going to do that for me. But I also do think we also indulge other players. And even one of the players that I really like in Fornals, I think we do indulge certain players to be in the team, even when they're not performing well. And ones that do have a good game, they're then not in the team the next one because the core team has to play. That's hard to criticise a lot of that, because we were performing and we have performed well over the course of the season. We did against United, then, played well in that game. I'm not going to say we didn't deserve to win it. Sorry, we didn't deserve to lose, because ultimately, if you don't score the goals, you deserve to lose. It's as simple as that. It's just that's football. Football is cruel. If you deserve to win, you will win. You will score the goal. The other team won't score. We did well against Leeds. Then, against, I think the next game was Everton, wasn't it, after the Leeds game?
I think we played Brentford at home, because I remember it was kind of a similar story to how it went with United. We lost 2-1 again. But then actually after that, we went on our little nice run where we beat Everton away, Spurs at home, and then Villa away. So, I mean, your point is really valid. We've had some really good moments. And that October month kind of summarised it. It kind of summarised our season, where we would lose to Brentford at home. Our home form started pretty poor at the start of the season, actually. And, if you look at it, our away form was actually really good. We went to St James's Park and won, went to Goodison Park and won, two stadiums we don't notoriously win at. Went to Ellen Road again, another tough place to go, generically. And then that 4-1 win against Villa. So, actually, if you look at it at the start of our season, we were much better away from home. And if we, I know we've scored in every home game, in the season, but if we'd actually, shown our authority in home games a bit more, it could have been a very, very different season. I think that's what I've taken from this whole kind of overview is our home form is actually what's let us down.
I think,
and go on.
There-
Sorry.
there's a pearl of wisdom that my granddad likes to use, and that's there's a difference between points dropped and points squandered. And when you're in control and when you drop a point, that's frustrating. However, when you concede to a brilliant bit of last play, or you just have that outstanding goal against you, then you can't look back and go, well, if only we picked up a point there. Or when you do that, you do the game a misservice as a whole. And I think we had our share of moments where we were very much the ones who nicked that last minute winner, like Antonio. That was a brilliant goal, and we delivered that. But I think there were too many times where we squandered points as such, as opposed to dropping them, and that was the frustrating thing, particularly as you mentioned at home.
Yeah, I think Brentford one, that the thing that always kind of annoyed me was we weren't smart enough. We were naive. And one of the things I said at the time was we are very slow to react to how a referee is refereeing a game.
Mm.
And we, not that we're trying to be honest, it's that we are just not cute enough in doing certain things. Brentford, for instance, knew that they could go down and they would get something. They knew they could put a bit of pressure on us and the ref wasn't going to do anything. But as soon as they went down, they got it. And we didn't react to that. Also, their players would talk to the ref. We didn't. And that's the one thing that I think Rice needs to develop as well. It's, if you look at old school captains throughout the Premier League era, it's not about berating the ref. It's about constantly going over and just making reference. If a foul happens to you, it's ref, that happened. Do not remember that happened there, and there, and there, and there. Pointing out the points of when he gives a free kick is, you're also, that happened in 3 other places for us, where's ours? And just adding that pressure to the ref slowly over time can start to change things. And that's one of the things that I think that we we don't do. We're not cute enough to kind of do that. We've not, against Brentford in particular, we didn't realise, I don't think we recognised what was going on before it was too late. And we were doing the same things again and again. There was a lot of naivety. What really bugged me was the goal we conceded at the end came about because of a really, really soft free kick given away by Ogbonna. And then we defended the free kick poorly. It's a decent enough save from Fabianski, but he just kind of pushed it out rather than try to push it away. And then we were just slow to react. And it was a great finish. Let's be honest. It was a powerful and good finish. But ultimately, you sit there and go, there's probably about 3 or 4 mistakes in that whole entire period that accumulated us into losing goals. And that's, I think, what has impacted us at points. And particularly after the Europa League games, because I think tired minds, tired legs, potentially lack of rotation or even substitutes in those periods where, in some games, I think we'd even this season not even made a sub in a game or made 1 sub and it's in like the 85th minute. And, granted, some players are not going to impact the game and they're not going to, but just having those little extra legs sometimes, it just freshens things up. And it at least looks as though you're helping the players. Otherwise, it looks like you're just saying to them, I need you to go and solve the problem because I don't have faith in what I have on the bench, which will also really, if you're a player on the bench and you don't get on in games, when you do play, you're like, well, he doesn't have faith in me. So you kind of play a bit for yourself in some cases. Not saying that they have, but it can start to perpetuate an attitude of, I'm not trusted, so I need to play for me. I think that's, and I've not necessarily seen that, but it's hard for a player to get themselves up for a game when they've chucked in with 5 minutes to go or chucked in randomly, because Sloth made the point around rustiness. If you're not playing, you're not fit. You're not match fit. You may be physically fit, but you're not match fit, and you don't make those split-second decisions you do when you are, in the mindset of, this is what I need to do, and this is how and when I need to do it.
One of the things that really kind of stood out to me, and I think I mentioned it last week, just with the lack of pace, but One of my good friends is a Brentford fan, and when they signed Visser, who scored the winner against us, he said, "What's he like?" And I'd watched a lot of Lorient last year because I really like their forward Terem Moffi, and I said he's going to give you lots of work, like he's going to give you 100% work rate every single time he goes out, but he's quick and he's a good finisher. And I was reading the other day, I think that he had basically, after his introduction, guaranteed them something like 12 extra points because he'd scored winners in quite a lot of the goals that quite a lot of his goals are winners. And it's having that option off the bench. It's that pace and that willingness to run that we just lacked. And Brentford came to our place, and I'll use the term that football Twitter loves, which is they basically shithoused a win, like they shithoused it. And I it was one of the games that I was at with my granddad, and we were just going, they are time wasting. They are like the goalkeeper. I think I don't know how long he was taking with his goal kicks, but he must have accumulated at least 5 minutes worth of time from the first half alone. And that's where we need to be smarter. Like if we've got, if we're in the 90th minute and it's 2-2, or we've got a point, just think, you know what? We've got some tired legs out there. Let's take a little bit longer with our throw-ins. Let's take a little bit longer with how we do these things. And just that lack of cuteness, as you said, it just cost us.
Yeah. I mean, although we kind of lost to Brentford, we then went on and won 3 of our remaining 4 in October. And then we went into November and December, and that's where we kind of saw where Europa League was maybe starting to take a bit of its toll on the squad. Where, we had that initial couple months where we were playing really well. Fatigue didn't look particularly a thing, but from November to December, we only picked up 3 wins from 9, and 2 of those were actually those 3-2 wins against Liverpool and Chelsea, and the other one was at Watford away right at the end of December. So in between those, we had a couple draws against Brighton, Burnley, lost to Arsenal, lost to Southampton. So we kind of had those issues, and we had Antonio going away on international break with Jamaica, which was kind of unexpected as well and didn't particularly help. Do you think, overall, getting to that up to that January transfer window, that first half of the season was considered a success so far by West Ham fans, or do you think it was kind of looked upon as a kind of a missed opportunity throughout that December, even though we were kind of, fighting with Europa League matches as well in between, and we'd made really good progress and topped the group, but ultimately we'd seen our league form dip a little bit after October, up until the January transfer window, and it kind of those defeats against Southampton at home, and drawing against Brighton and drawing against Burnley, really took its impact on our overall standings at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think we were still about 5th, 6th at that period as well. And I remember in that time, obviously, a lot of it will be pointed towards it was on Ogbonna. Ogbonna got his injury against Liverpool, and then obviously it coincided with a dip in form. But also something else that's not really talked around, it's mainly focused on Ogbonna, is the fact that Antonio stopped scoring, Antonio stopped assisting. And I think in the first 10 games, he had 6 goals and 2 assists. And then all of a sudden you go from that to then going on a stretch of, I think about 10 games, 8 to 10 games or something with no goals, maybe 1, maybe 2 assists. So, that had a huge impact because obviously he's vital. And if he wasn't scoring at that period, or even kind of being massively involved in that attack, we were solely reliant on, say, Benrahma or even on Bowen. Even more so because the goals had dried up for Souček, because we changed the dynamic in midfield, and that really disrupted us at times. At times it was perfect, it was great, but other times it really did impact us. There's things like the penalty we should have had that was then we got an apology for. It's just kind of like what's the point in an apology? You've admitted fault, right? Okay, so you're not going to do it again. But you've done it in other games. You've had to apologize. So what are you going to do about, and it's a separate matter, what are you going to do to improve the standard of officiating, not only just on the pitch, but off the pitch? Because if you're having to retrospectively apologize because you missed what is a glaringly obvious mistake, and it's 2 mistakes as well, and you have video technology and you still can't get it right, that's not a problem with VAR, as people say it is. It's a problem with the people behind it. And that also has impacted us. Had we scored that penalty, again, we likely would have gone on to win that game, because Burnley just didn't look like they were going to score for it in a month of Sunday. So again, that's 3 points. That puts us above United. So that one game could have changed. And this is what I mean. So you can never put it down to one game, because there's so many of those. You can say, had that gone differently, that would have impacted us positively. And every team has that. So it's always, you can't look at one. You have to look at a collective as to where did we drop, where did we lose those points. But, I think leading up to December, that December period, it did feel a bit like a missed opportunity, because there were games where, you would have expected better, or we should have got the win, or even held up for a draw. Obviously, the Chelsea result was fantastic. What a game that was. We held on, same as we did against Liverpool. We held on and held in there. But then you get to January and you're thinking, okay, we've just had investment. We've just had Krasinski come in. We've just been told it's about £200 million worth of capital put into the club, part of it to pay off debt, part of it to sort out training, part of it again to transfers. So you're actually feeling a bit buoyed and going, okay, we're in a really good, strong position. Teams, Tottenham, Arsenal, at that point were kind of faltering still. They weren't getting that kind of head of steam. And, we had a few games ahead. So it was kind of, if we invest properly now, maybe get ourselves a centre forward, maybe look at another midfielder, or maybe look at another defender, we could, really start to push on and start to improve. But as ever, like our dreams, they fade and die. So that view of January kind of, dissipated and went away.
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating things, as well, as you mentioned, is that it should have really been a wake-up call to everyone involved that actually, fourth place was very gettable at that point. The teams around us were so they were so inconsistent, and much like we've said, we're dropping points at places, and so were some of the top 4, and the top 4 chasing pack. So the thing that did really disappoint me was, I even remember Antonio saying, I'd like someone to come in and help. And for me, when your striker, your star striker, is saying, I'd like someone to come and help, that should be like the biggest kind of red flag. And even if with the moves that we reportedly made, and I don't know if we want to go into the January transfer window a bit more in depth in the next bit, but with the likes of Diaz, Nunes, who were supposedly bid for, well, we know they were, but they were, we tried FC as we like to say, but it's simply not good enough. And this for me is it could easily have been the best season we've ever had. And whilst it's been a fantastic season, no doubt about it, there is that kind of, well, if you look at it purely from a unbiased point of view, you stand back and analyze it, that's a missed opportunity. Someone who could come in and, even if they say got 5 goals over the period of the time they're here, they could be 5 goals that snatch as a point. They could be a goal that wins us a game. Or even in the case of Frankfurt, levels on the first leg, and then the second leg is something totally different. So it's for me, I think the club in January kind of just took their foot off the gas. And one of the things that was that came out, and I don't know if it's true, like it's just purely gossip, but do you remember one of the managers Moyes played in the FA Cup was saying about how he basically said he had £100 million to spend in January.
I think it's Kidderminster,
Kidderminster, yeah. And I just remember thinking, how can you have that and get it so wrong? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go on the words of gossip, but it's that's only adds to the element of head scratching involved.
It kind of leads you to the thought of, are you so concerned with getting it wrong in the centre forward position? Because we have a history of, a litany of strikers who haven't performed. And are you so concerned about spending big or just getting it wrong that, in fact, you'll just do nothing, thinking that we will get by? And I think the problem is as well, I say the problem, we had a great January. Like, let's not. January results were brilliant. And let's face it, if you're already of the mind of you not totally nailed on as to who you want, and you're looking at those results and you're seeing how we're playing, it does reinforce the idea you don't need options, because the options you have are performing to such a level. And, granted, one of those teams were Norwich, right? But still, we beat Crystal Palace, Norwich, Leeds, and then we only lost to United to a last-minute goal.
Well,
it's kind of hard for a manager then to think, if you're already like a small squad and you've never necessarily had a plethora of strikers throughout your career as a manager, well, why do I need another one? Because I can play Vlasic there. Antonio's performing so well and he's not injured. I have Yarmolenko I can play there. All of a sudden you start looking at your squad and going, but I have options I can put around and I can maybe keep that money to the summer. Personally, I feel that's a bit of a naive approach and foolhardy. And I think it has impacted us. Some will probably argue, well, it hasn't, but I believe it has. And it's kind of, the inactivity isn't something that should be praised, because had we been active and it got us to top 4, then you outright we'd all be sitting there going, what a genius the man is. Granted, had we won some sort of trophy, we'd all say that, but because we haven't, it's always that slight tinge of what could have been had we just done that one move.
And I always like you always get that counter argument of why if it's not broken, don't fix it. Or you get like, well, Antonio did this, and it's like, when this was happening, let's not lie to ourselves here. Antonio was in a dry spell, and it wasn't just goal scoring, as you said, it was creating as well. And that is surely the time when you look at the window and you go, right, I can get someone in, and even if it's just a game's rest for Antonio, if he sees someone else scoring, you can argue that next time he's going to go out and think, I'm playing for my place. And we spoke about the complacency of having favourites, but it's just that rocket up the backside. And if you have that impetus there, even if it's, I think there's the interview about the Tevez season, and when the players came in and they saw how good Tevez and Mascherano were on the training ground, and they were going, bloody hell, we're going to have to step up. We're going to like that impact to the squad is also something that can't be underestimated. And could you imagine if we'd have gone out first week, put some money down, and we'd sorted out the Nunes deal? You know, he's not the most refined player, but if we'd done that, and then the players come in and go, oh, he's a unit. He's a hell of a finisher, and you know, he runs really well with the ball.
He's also a left wing option as well, so he could have played him as the inside forward and adopted that Liverpool style of your three centre forwards, and then gone to a more reserved three in midfield.
Yeah, that option to have that boost and the boost that it can give the squad, but the competition as well is what I think ultimately really hindered us. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we could have chased down Chelsea or something, but I'm saying that it ultimately feels like a bad business decision as well, because if you had gone out and spent, I think they wanted something like, was it 50 million euros in the end? They wanted to hold out
50 to 60, yeah.
And you can potentially make that back in league position. You can make that back in winning a competition potentially. And I'm not going to say that he's going to, you know, he's not Cristiano Ronaldo. He's not going to go out and sell you 1 million shirts or whatever it might be. But you can potentially make that back in shirt sales and advertising revenue. And it just kind of felt like everyone was going, no, we're happy with what we've got. And it's like, you're a businessman. You should be thinking, right, let's get someone in. Let's push for that spot where we know we're going to get the extra 70 million pounds or whatever it might be, instead of the manager's choices. He's happy with the squad. Well, let's try and give him an option to be happier. Like, if he wants Nunes, go out and get it done early. We know he wanted Diaz. We know we were very close to doing that deal. So if we know he wants someone, why wait? That for me is the big frustration.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, well, unfortunately, we didn't bring anyone in January. You know, we were really hoping that even someone like Jesse Lingard would come in on loan again to the end of the season, just to give that spark, but we didn't. Then we ended up starting February, beat Watford, and then we started to see where we looked a bit fatigued and we were dropping points where we were leading. So, you know, we went away to Leicester, you know, took the lead in that game, didn't play particularly well, ended up getting a draw in the end, you know, with that last minute equalizer from Dawson. And then the following week we had Newcastle at home, where again we took the lead, a game we should then go on to win. But again, ended up drawing that game. And then we did see out a win against Wolves. So overall, February was actually an okay month. But it was another one where we were dropping points, where we shouldn't be. And we were starting to see the likes of Arsenal, Tottenham start to pick up those wins that we weren't. You know, the arrival of Conte early October, November definitely had that impact where they were starting to win the games that they should. And Arsenal went on that really good run where they were just winning. And, you know, we went into March where we had the excitement of Europa League as well. But we went into that month where we'd started to slowly slip away from what we thought was, you know, pretty much a guaranteed top six if we'd continued how we were. And, you know, only realistically, we were thinking, you know, sixth is probably the lowest now with how United are playing and Spurs. But well, actually, we could probably get top four, as we've all said as well. But yeah, we went into March, and you know, it was kind of the beginning of what we expected from not making those signings in January, and we started to have to prioritize Europa League over our, you know, Premier League campaign. And, you know, actually the games that we kind of sacrificed were huge games if we were just going for top six. You know, last season, they would have been absolutely massive games. You know, you think of Arsenal at home a bit later on, which we'll get onto. You know, there was a few in there, you know, Spurs away, I think after Europa League as well. Another huge game we probably would have, you know, taken a lot more seriously. So do you think, what position would you say is the one where, even if we just made one signing in January, would have probably got us over the line in terms of top six? If you could kind of pick just one position that we would bring in, what would it be?
I think if I want to avoid the obvious one, and say that attacking position, like say a centre forward or even a winger, I'm going to be a little bit cantankerous and say centre mid, someone in the central defensive mid. And I've named a few players recently who I just like, I said across the season, with Rice's bombing forward and with Souček's lack of goals this season, we really needed a counterweight to that. And I know that would have changed how we played. But when you looked at the ability of the players that we have in that area, and, having an anchor behind them potentially changes a lot. You could be looking at Souček getting 4 or 5 goals with his head. And you could be looking at Rice, finishing with a couple more goals as well. But also just the ability to sit back and defend and having someone like a physical unit of Claudio Carne, Borussia Mönchengladbach, or even just, nipping in and saying to someone like PSV, we want to sign Sangare, get it over the line. There's a lot of players that we could have pushed for, and we just didn't. And I think having that centre mid option would have really helped out. Goals are the obvious ones, but if we're looking at how we could have scored more goals or created more chances, I think having that anchor in the centre mid is going to be a huge, huge thing for us.
I think a player that me and Slav talked about a lot over the summer that we both quite wanted was Koopmeiners. He would have been the epitome of a player that we need. So as a defensive midfielder, he's not one that is going to give huge defensive contribution, but he's a good tackler. He does work hard. And he's good in the air, but also can play centre back, defensive midfield, centre midfield, attacking midfield. So he can play the entire spine. But the thing that's more important is the fact that his passing range and quality is ridiculous. He can break down the most stubborn teams because he can play, but also he just come off the back of scoring 18 goals in the league. Fair enough, there was a few penalties in there, but also he can take a set piece. He can get on ahead. He'd been one of those players that had you look to just go for a double pivot, he can essentially still manage the goals like Souček does, but makes you more assured in possession. If you go to a free, then you free up Souček, who can bomb forward. You have Rice, and you also have someone else who's incredibly intelligent on the ball, not only with his passing, but with the way he carries, but also, again, knowing when to run ahead in the midfield. You'd have then all of a sudden had 2 goal scorers in your midfield. Rice, who is developing that side of play. Had we invested on Koopmeiners, I think went for about 18 million euros.
Yeah.
Rather than the 4 million and the 27 million we did of Vlasic. That would have been a far better deal for us, taking that one player than taking those 2, in my mind, because it would have given us that little bit extra in midfield, probably would have allowed, say, Lanzini to play a bit more advanced. And, when you look at his finishing, like the goal against Crystal Palace, for instance, you would argue that had he been allowed to be more advanced, he may have got a few more goals than he did. So in actual fact, probably Koopmeiners would have been a better deal because way that Lanzini came back into the fold would have done better. But it's frustrating. I think, centre midfield is a clear one. We could say defence, but let's be fair. Dawson was quality. Zuma came back early, so you can understand why they didn't look at that. If you wanted to kind of be pedantic, you would probably say if you really wanted to, one of the fullback positions would have probably been another one to look at because obviously Souček's injury, Soufal's injury, and he was struggling. And, we've already discussed our shortcomings and our issues with Cresswell. And I think the other thing that kind of frustrates me is that when you look at the season and you look at that January, I think every one of us would have gone, you know what, fair play. Boys made a decision, made a brave decision. We've all stood up and gone, okay, respect that. Maybe don't agree with it, but you respect the fact that he was brave enough to put his neck on the line and say, this is what I'm going with, this is what I'm happy with. But it's the fact that he then didn't use any youth to support it. And I know that it's a really contentious issue for fans, but the reason why some of us bring it up is because Moyes' own words, and we're not going to talk about the Red Bull model, right? That's not the point that is actually being is why some are saying the lack of use of youth is frustrating. It's because in his own words, he says he likes a small squad because he likes to bring through youth and give youth a chance to play. We didn't see that. And you had a small squad, you had injuries, you had a team lacking pace, and you had players that were pacey. Now, we're not saying that those players are also even good enough. We don't, but again, we don't know until they play. So you can kind of, I think you can look back on the season and go, well, maybe that player might have given something, might not have. But again, it's that you don't know until they play. And a lot of people say they're not ready, but how many youth players have ever been ready when they came through? Look at all the players we brought through in recent years. Jack Collison certainly wasn't ready. His debut against Arsenal, when he came on, he was poor. But look what he went on to do. He did well for us. Tompkins wasn't ready. Remember Anton Ferdinand when he came through? That was a year ahead of schedule, but we had to play him because we needed young players. Rice certainly wasn't ready. We had to play him within a back three because we were concerned with playing him as a centre-back in that three. And he got moved to centre midfield because, well, quite frankly, they wanted to improve his feet and his footwork. Oxford looked ready on the first game, but after that, he made a mistake and then was hoinked and never played again. So it's this idea of ready is just such a kind of banal point. It just doesn't make sense because you can't say anyone's ready until they play because you could use that argument to say, like they're saying that about youth, but then you can apply that to Vlasic and go, well, he wasn't ready for the Premier League, but he's a senior player, so that tag is not used. It's like you can't arbitrarily just put it around because youth equals not ready. And it frustrates me because I think that you could have potentially tried some of the youth. And had it worked, great. Had it not, fine. There's no winners and there's no real losers apart from the kid who maybe didn't perform very well, but he's likely going to get a chance in the lower leagues because he's played at least some Premier League football. It's no point having a youth system if you're not going to play it. We spend about £5 to £10 million a year on a youth system that needs to generate money. So unless you are playing some of those, one or two of those players a season, not going to do it. I know, again, the other counter argument, which annoys me, is, well, we played Johnson. Yeah, but Johnson's been in and around the team since he made his debut against Man City. So it's not kind of something to sit there and hold the flag up and go, look, guys, we're playing a youth player because we have him, we have Declan Rice. Like, yeah, but they're established in that squad now. They're not new players given minutes, given a chance to perform. But anyway, that's my cross to bear. I'm going to stop there. But I think had in some of those games we played one or two youth players, or at least given them some time to play, we may have just gone, okay, well, we can understand why you didn't spend because you want to see whether any of this new crop or any of these youngsters can do a job for us next season. And I think that's the thing that bugs me is that had they played or someone would have played, we'd have known if they were in a position to give us anything next season or not. And then it stops that conversation of, do we promote any youth? Because now we have no frame of reference other than, well, we'll just chuck them in to fill out the squad. We don't know if they can do anything for us. If they can't, then great. Because if we could have sold them this summer and said, well, it's not going to work out. You're not at the level we need. Thanks very much. I'm going to sell you. But now we're in the position of, we don't know whether you can do a job, but we're going to give you a chance this season. We had a 4-month period where we could have kind of done that already and worked out and assessed them as to their actual readiness rather than chucking them into a season and going, let's see where you are. And then probably in 6 months' time going, all right, yeah, we're going to probably sell you now. And they've only got 6 months in their contract. Doesn't make much sense to me personally.
Well, we went into, arguably the biggest months of the season in March and April. We got the win against Sevilla in March, which meant we'd go and play Lyon in April. And I think that was the pivotal month for us. That is where we lost 6th. Because if you look at in between those Lyon games, we went to Brentford, lost 2-0, arguably one of our worst performances of the season. Then we went to Lyon, got that 3-0 win, had Burnley a few days later at home, failed to win that game, and probably should have lost that game if they'd scored that penalty as well. And then we went to Chelsea and, rotated our squad, rested the likes of Rice and Antonio, and kind of threw that game away. So if I could ask you guys now, would you have swapped that Europa League win against Sevilla if it meant that we'd have had a clear run in April to get sixth again this season, where we probably would have beat Burnley, would have taken Chelsea more seriously and also Brentford? Would you have swapped that or no?
No.
I think in hindsight, you would say yes, but that's hindsight, right? Because then we know Europa League is a bigger competition. It means more money into the club, and it means we're playing Europa League again. So hindsight would say yes. At the time, 100% would have sacrificed the league for a chance of winning Europa League, because there was a genuine chance to win Europa League. So I think Moyes was right. I do think in games such as like Chelsea, there was a point in that game, had we gone for it, and used our subs, we would have won that game, because Chelsea were on the rope, especially in that first half. They were on the rope. So had we potentially gone for it a little bit more in the second, we might have even got a point, which may have in the end caused a bit more pressure on United, which meant they may have dropped a point. It's all kind of ifs, buts, and maybes. But yeah, I think hindsight, yes, but ultimately, no. There was a trophy for grabs, and it was a genuine opportunity. So I think the decision to sacrifice the league was the right one.
Slough, what about you?
Nah, 100% no. Like, I mean, I do totally understand what Mike's saying, and obviously with the knock-on effects of the lack of action in January, you could say, oh well, we could have used the small squad to get Europe again. But we've got Conference League, and while I kind of use the analogy of like, you had the chance of potentially staying in a 4-star resort in the Europa, and you end up with a free holiday in a 3-star resort. Well, you're still going to go, yeah, all right. But you're probably thinking, 4-star would have been nice. So it's that kind of, it's the missed opportunity. But for me, I went out to Frankfurt, and I wouldn't have swapped it. I think, it's one thing to get to those knockout rounds, and for the fans to experience, okay, well, we got to the quarterfinals, but to get so close to a final is something different. So,
I mean, you can't. It's hindsight. You can't really say, focus on the league when you're playing Sevilla, when arguably we don't know if we'll ever have that chance again. Same with Lyon and Frankfurt. So, and no, I completely get that and agree with you guys. But we ended the season okay. We beat Norwich after that disappointment. Drew with City in a very good game, and then it was in our hands to get sixth. We didn't know that because things can happen, but at the end of the day, we just didn't have enough to push over. And I think finishing 7th, with all things considered, with a very small squad for coping with that kind of Thursday, Sunday, with the injuries we had throughout, which we knew we could kind of expect. I think finishing 7th was definitely an overachievement from what most West Ham fans expected at the start. We wanted that Europa League. We wanted to prioritise that, and we were all kind of happy to kind of sacrifice the season, finish mid-table. If it meant we went on that run, even getting to the semi-final, we would have easily taken that. So, just looking overall at the kind of the stats and how they compared to the previous season when we didn't have Europa League to deal with, they weren't too dissimilar. And you can kind of see where the Europa League had that impact. And this season, I think we won 16 games out of 38 in comparison to the season before, we won 19. So there was a few games where it swung, where we got the win, and we didn't have that Europa League to deal with. And we finished on 56 points this season, and the season before we finished on 65. So that 3-game swing was the difference. And if you look at last season, 65 points was just enough to get 6th. if we'd have got 65 points this season, we would be home and clear. So I think we've seen, firsthand where that impact of Europa League football has occurred, and overall we definitely overperformed, in my opinion, for what we should have done this season with the squad we had. But I don't know if you guys have some, final thoughts on your seat that, the season that's just happened for the Premier League, and how you kind of see it, whether it's a success or whether it's something you kind of dwell on as a missed opportunity to get Europa League again.
It's a tricky one, right? I think at the start of the season, I'd said, if we finish 8th, I'll be happy with that, because that's a consolidation that we're a top 8 team, top 10 to top 8 team. But more importantly was the fact that I also said that it also depends on our transfer dealings. If we stick with majority of what we have, then 8th is a good finish. And as long as we put in, we get out of our group stage of the Europa League, and we put in a good performance in the cups, then we have to look at that as a good season. I think ultimately, over the course of the season, when with all the passion that you kind of have where you go for it, you just feel you have that slight moment of, I think Steve put it quite well with that, I could have had a 4-star hotel. We had I'd say we probably had a 3 to 4-star hotel kind of experience, this season. But you just sit there and go, what if I'd have just maybe stretched and gone for a full star, or maybe just pushed for that, 4.5-star hotel. It felt just after January that maybe we should have just reached a little. And I even said at the time, I would have been happy if we would have used up summer budget in January, because if that summer budget would have got us Champions League, or we'd have got Champions League football, finished 4th, or won the Europa League, ultimately you'd be sitting there going, well, that's fine. Well, yeah, okay, we may not spend as much in the summer, but we've got a good core team. We just maybe add 1 or 2 quality players, and then we maybe look at some youth as part of that, or let's just get some quality but cheaper additions. Now, after that, cheap and quality don't necessarily go together. But again, you can kind of go, you can kind of accept it a bit more. You're not going to spend more money. So I just think this season's been absolutely brilliant. It's just always that slight tinge of what could have been. But I think we have to credit the players, the staff, the manager. I don't want to say the board, because I just can't. I just can't, physically can't do it and praise them, because it's them.
The funny thing is, imagine if we'd had a Sully special, and we get a South American striker turn up, and then score the goals that take us to like.
Would have been Nunez. Nunez would have been the Sully special.
We'd have been like, what the hell's gone on? But one thing that I'll put a positive spin on it, and I'll kind of knock it down a little bit. But one thing I think does deserve real credit is that we have a small squad, and I can't remember the last time there was a team outside of the top 6 who got to such a stage in Europa, and even a squad in general that small that did that on both fronts and still got European football the season after. Like, that is something that I think is really impressive, and it does speak to Moyes' management ability that we've done that. Now the negative part is just, you have such a small squad. You need to build on that. We know all about how Moyes likes to give a full pre-season. Well, if that's the case, why didn't we sign early in the summer and push forward with these players? And that's just kind of the gripe that I have is it is a bit of a miss. However you look at it, it's a missed opportunity given the lapses around us. And Tottenham, as much as I hate saying this, summed this up really well. They brought in Kulusevski, and they brought in, was it Bentancur? And, that's pushed them into that top 4 spot. And it's allowed them to get the best out of Son and Kane. And Kane, I'm not saying Antonio's anywhere near the same level player, but Kane had that really dry spell at the start of the season. And, I don't like Harry Kane. I've been very open about that. I don't like him at all. And I was going, oh, maybe this is the decline. But, there's still that player there. And they built around him. And the players who weren't performing stepped up. And that's just my gripe with how the season's gone. Because when Antonio dried up, we didn't have that. And we needed it. If we'd had that, even without my West Ham cap on, I think we'd have got top 4. And that's just that disappointment. So objectively, you can say that, it's a missed opportunity. But I think with such a small squad and to get as far as we did in Europe and against quality teams, like, they're Champions League level teams. Let's not get that one. Frankfurt, not so much. But to go that far is really impressive. So it's a bittersweet pill, but one that I think we can be proud of.
Yeah, I think, in you can kind of easily get caught up in the moment of a season. Throughout that period, we were all getting disappointed at those kind of results against the Burnleys because, we knew how close we were to getting that top 6. But it is very easy to forget how small our squad was. How well we've done in Europa League. The beginning of the season, we all just wanted to get out of that group. That was the main goal. So we've completely exceeded everyone's expectations with that. It's just so frustrating that we came so close, and Rangers would have been in the final where a lot of us would have fancied us in that. So I think overall we've got to say it's been a very positive season. With all things considered, and we did outperform ourselves in terms of expected stats if you want to look into that. But overall really good season. January was the chance I think that we missed, and that will be the one moment from the season which I'll look back on and think that's probably killed us in terms of getting that top 6. And just 1 or 2 players would have made such a big difference. And who knows, it would have even made a difference in our Europa League campaign. But it's ifs and buts. We still got Europa Conference League. We're still getting those European trips away, which we can all be excited about for next season. And hopefully the recruitment this summer justifies what Moyes kind of deserves and the squad deserves, because we do still have a very good chance to build on what we have. But I fear that if we don't this season, it could be getting too late in terms of what we want to do, and we could start to burn out, and some of our key players will start to leave. So overall, I think it's been a very positive one. And looking back on it like this, it's clear to see what the issues were, but also what brilliant moments we did have throughout the season. And it's exciting going into this summer what we're going to do. It looks like we're moving pretty quick, and getting those key positions sorted early. So fingers crossed we can look for a striker in the next few weeks, get that wrapped up before pre-season, and give them a chance to embed into the squad and start to understand how we want to play. And we've got a real platform here. Still got European football, which we'll look forward to, and arguably we'll be more confident in than we were this season. And hopefully we can perform again in the league. But yes, I think that's pretty much summarized it. We've done well to just keep it over an hour, I think. But yeah, thank you all for listening anyway. Let us know how you think the season did. Finishing 7th, was that a success, or was it slightly underwhelming for you? Would you have sacrificed that Europa League win against Sevilla if it meant we had a clear run in April? Who knows? But yeah, thank you all for watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. And we're going to do a Europa League review within the next week or so, where we'll look more in depth at that brilliant run, that ended in ultimate disappointment, but something we were really proud on. So yeah, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. And yeah, like I said, leave a comment of your review of the season, and we'll take a look at those as well. So yes, thank you as always, and come on you Irons.
Come on you Irons.